This is episode 60 of the Why Not Me podcast. Anxiety versus faith, or you can handle it even when you think you can't. The benefit of not knowing. I'm your host, Danita Bremer. I'm a wife, mom, member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and a life coach. And I believe when you know who you are, you can be the best you at what you're called to do. That's what we talk about here. Okay, I was swimming in ideas and I didn't know what to talk about today. I was thinking about my clients and what they need. I was thinking about experiences and discussions that I've had with my family. And I just had to think about, what do I feel called to talk about today? And what do you need to hear? How can I help you be a more unconditionally loving mother and disciple of Christ? And I picked a topic. I have an ongoing list of ideas for podcast episodes. And I picked one that I thought, okay, that one's kind of calling to me. And it was about uncertainty. And so I started writing notes and then things just started to flow. And the podcast isn't so much about uncertainty, although that's part of it. It ends up being more about anxiety versus faith. So I'm super excited about this because I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with and they don't have practical tools to help them. So I'm hoping to give you some kind of context and understanding and also some practical tools that I will weave in here. So the first thing I want to start with is that kind of bringing it back to the motivational triad. I don't know what episode I mentioned that, one of the very early episodes, but it is this, that the natural man in us, the ego in us, I usually just refer to it as our brain, doesn't like uncertainty, right? The motivational triad is that we always are seeking pleasure, trying to avoid pain, and trying to be the most energy efficient as possible. And according to our natural man or our ego or just our brain, like our lower brain, uncertainty is the arch nemesis because what you don't know could kill you, right? If you're walking along and you don't know there's a tiger behind that large rock, then you could be walking and the tiger could pounce on you and kill you, right? So the natural man, the ego, the brain, the lower brain comes from this assumption that what we don't know or understand could kill us, right? Now, in today's day and age, we don't have a lot of real threats to our lives. I'm going to try to not cough at you, but I do have a little bit of a cough left, but I feel myself like pushing down the cough. So I will edit it out if I cough at you. So when we see something or anticipate something that feels uncertain, our brain is like, it can't be uncertain. We have to know, we have to figure it out, because if we don't, then we might die. And so we get to work trying to solve for the possible bad thing. Something bad will happen. Oh, there we go. If we believe that what we don't know could kill us or something bad might happen if I don't know, then we get to work trying to solve for the possible bad thing with action now. Now, the action could be internal action like thinking or worrying, or it could be external action like I'm going to do this and this and this just in case, right? And then we feel exhausted and burnt out because here's the thing, we're taking action towards something that hasn't even happened yet. So we're really taking unnecessary action. We are expending energy towards something that might happen but hasn't happened. And I want to take this one step further, which usually our brain just stops at, if I don't understand, if I don't know, then something bad will happen. If something bad happens, what we are believing in these cases is that I won't be able to handle it. And that is the lie. That's like the thing I want you to take away from this episode today, is that when you're feeling anxious, it's because you are believing that there's some uncertainty that you won't be able to handle. And you will and can handle it. And this is how I know, because you are handling it. Whatever you are doing right now in relation to any unknowns or uncertainty in your life is how you are handling it. Now, you might not be handling it well, meaning you might not feel good about the way you're handling it, but that's only because you're believing you won't be able to handle it. And so you're stuck in this loop of there's something uncertain and I have to figure it out, or else something terrible might happen. And if something terrible might happen, then I won't be able to handle it. And it goes back and forth. Okay, I have to figure it out, right? And we just get stuck in this loop. The way out of the loop is to stop believing you should or must handle everything, or to stop believing that if something bad happens, you won't be able to handle it, because it's literally impossible. The world is filled with uncertainty. Not even just the uncertainty you're aware of. There's like so much more uncertainty. There's tons of uncertainty that we never think about. We only think about the ones that we think are kind of dangerous, right? It's impossible to be able to plan and take action and solve for every kind of uncertainty that could possibly come up, because we can never think of everything that might happen, which is like why this world is so impossible, right? Some things are literally out of your control or ability to handle. Like the United States could get bombed, right? I mean, I don't think that's very likely, but this is something that at certain points in history, we have believed as a collective. And you, as one single person, that happening, that possibility is completely outside of your control, right? It's outside of your ability to do anything real or effective against that particular future possible threat, right? When we feel anxiety, I think it's a sign. It's a sign of a lot of different things, but I think it's a sign that we are trying to solve for things that are literally outside of our control. Like it's just beyond us. We can't solve for them, even if we try, right? Side note, there are 3 kinds of business in the world. This is according to Byron Katie, and I buy into this. There's your business, there's other people's business, and there's God's business. Anxiety happens when we step out of our own business and we get into other people's business or God's business. Like there could be a snowstorm or a hurricane or a flood or an earthquake or something like that, right? Natural disasters fall under God's business. And when we try to solve for them and try to take action to prevent them or prevent us being harmed by them, we are stepping into God's business. So get back in your own business, girl. Anxiety is when you're taking action toward the impossible. So stop it. Okay, a few years ago, this was before we lived in Germany. So it was at least 5 to 6 years ago. I used to get so anxious about driving in the snow. I was driving a Honda Odyssey, which is the Honda minivan, and it wasn't the best in the snow. It didn't have 4-wheel drive or all-wheel drive or anything like that. And every time it snowed, and I had to go somewhere, I would get so anxious. And then one day I realized, this is like showing you a little bit that I've always been very self-aware, even before I found life coaching tools. I realized that the thing that was making me feel anxious, and I spent years and years driving or avoiding driving in the snow, feeling anxious about driving in the snow. Before I realized this, the thing that was actually making me feel anxious was that if I got stuck in the snow somehow, or if I got into like a fender bender or an accident, that I wouldn't know what to do. And so honestly, my biggest worry was like taking the kids to school and being stuck at the stop sign, which was on this slight little hill, and my car not going anywhere and backing up traffic and like, what would people think? Right. And I realized that the anxiety was like, I wouldn't be able to get myself out of this situation. And that in addition to that, not only would I not be able to get out of it, it was like my job somehow to get out of it. And so I thought about that and I thought, okay, well, I could put a shovel and some sand in the back of my car. First of all, the weight of that helps a little bit. But if I ever did get stuck, I could shovel my way out of the snow. I could put a little bit of sand in front or behind my tires for some grip, and maybe that would help, right? So that's what I did. And the other thing I did is I realized that there are always people around to help. Like if I got stuck somehow, or, taking the kids to school, there would be tons of other parents that are taking their kids to school too. And they would help me. They would push my car or whatever, right? They would help me. And if there was nobody and I was stuck and I couldn't do anything about it, I could make a phone call. Like I have a cell phone on me most of the time, right? And if I forgot my cell phone, then somebody would drive by eventually, right? And so I realized that I was thinking I had to do it all on my own, figure it out, know what to do, and that I wasn't trusting myself to do that. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, okay, there's some actual actions I can take. I can put some sand and a shovel in the back of my car. And then I can just trust that if something happens, I'll figure it out, or there will be people there to help me. God will put people in my path to help me. And my anxiety level about driving in the snow went drastically down. Now, I still get a little bit anxious when I drive in the snow, but now I have a 4-wheel drive car. And I just believe that there will always be people there to help, or I trust myself to figure out how to solve the problem I have to solve in that moment. So that's kind of an example of what I'm talking about. When we get anxious, we're like worrying and ruminating and obsessing about something that hasn't happened yet. And our brains feel like we're taking action toward that thing, but really it's all in our mind. And when we write it out, I do recommend writing it out on paper. There's something about getting those thoughts out on paper that puts a little bit of distance between us and the actual thoughts. And then we can go like assess, like, how likely is this to happen? Is this really true? But when we write it out on paper, then we can go, okay, so what am I going to do about this? Is this something I can even do anything about? We can counteract the uncertainty and the anxiety that comes around that uncertainty if we trust that if something is within our power or our ability, that we will be able to take appropriate action. And if it's not, we can trust other people or we can trust God. So that's where faith comes in. Faith is believing that God has your back, right? That God is watching over you and he wants what's best for you and he's helping you even when you can't see it. Faith is trusting that whatever is not within your control will be taken care of by God in some way. And this is you handling it. And it is in quotation marks. It, fill it in the blank with whatever you're worried about, right? It could be your marriage. It could be something with your kids. It could be something with your career or job, or, if you have depression, or it could be anything. Turning it over to God and trusting that he is helping you is part of how you handle it. It's handling it in a very specific way. It's trusting God. I believe that this is our work here on earth. The other night we were reading Come Follow Me as a Family, and my husband facetiously said, well, is it so bad if people don't have agency, if we just like make all their choices for them, which he was, wink, wink about toward the teenagers, right? And so I had never really entertained that question. And I thought, okay, well, let's just see, is it so bad? And so I said, well, what's the point of life? According to my patriarchal blessing, the purpose of life is to gain eternal life. How do we do that? We choose God. I think the the point of life. Sometimes we say the point of life is to learn and grow. And I think that's true, but I don't think that's the actual like primary point of life. I think the point of life is to choose God. And the only way to choose God and choose God's way is by faith, because we cannot prove there's a God. So choosing God, any action you take, when you say your prayers, when you read your scriptures, when you go to church, when you take the sacrament, when you serve other people, like all of those things are choosing God. And we do it because we have faith in God. We have some level of hope or faith toward God. Now, remember, faith is not knowing. As soon as we have a knowledge of something, our faith goes dormant and our knowledge increases, right? This is according to Alma 32. Alma 32, verse 21, faith is not to have a perfect knowledge of things. Therefore, if ye have faith, ye hope for things which are not seen, which are true. So here's the pattern according to the gospel, according to the scriptures. First, we have hope. I think of hope as like that tiny little seed of faith, the seed that hasn't been planted yet. And then as soon as we plant that hope, which means we take some kind of action toward the hope, it turns into faith, right? So then we have this little seed of faith and we nourish it and we grow it. We basically take action with the belief of whatever that faith is, right? And then our faith grows until we have a knowledge, right? We test the faith, we work with it, we nourish it, we grow it, right? We give it a good environment, and then it grows into a knowledge. So I had a hope that God was real, Jesus Christ was real, Joseph Smith was a prophet, the Book of Mormon and its translation was all divine, but I didn't yet have a knowledge or a testimony of it. And so I prayed and I asked God to help me with my testimony of Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon. So in that prayer, I took my little seed of faith, like, well, I sure hope it's true. And I took action on it. And I planted that seed of hope and I turned it into faith. And then I started taking action. I didn't immediately get an answer. I remember kneeling next to my bed and asking Heavenly Father to help me gain my own testimony of the prophet Joseph Smith. And several days later, I was reading my scriptures on a public bus in Seattle, and I received a witness, right? And I'm sure that over the course of those several days, I was doing things. I was praying and reading scriptures and doing things toward growing my faith. And then I had an experience where I really felt the Spirit. I was reading in the introduction of the Bible, not the Bible, of the Book of Mormon. And I was reading the account of Joseph Smith when the prophet Moroni visited him. And I read a specific sentence and the Spirit just like overcame me to the point where I was like crying tears in public, right? Before this, I never cried tears in public. I never hardly cried. And then I knew that Joseph Smith was a prophet and the Book of Mormon was true. So I took my hope, I turned it into faith, I nourished the faith, I received a witness, and that has turned into a knowledge. I know Joseph Smith was a prophet. I know the Book of Mormon is the word of God. I don't have to have faith in that anymore. I don't have to trust God. Now, sometimes our testimonies wax and they wane. So there might be a point in my life where I will doubt it again. I'll doubt the experience I had, maybe. And I will then turn that knowledge back into faith, and I'll have to work on that faith again, right? This is the pattern. It's hope, faith, knowledge. And then I'm going to throw one other little thing in here. Once we have knowledge, then we can work on charity. We can work on loving it and like spreading it, right? I believe this is the pattern of the gospel. If we feel anxious over all the things we don't or can't know, we are not exercising faith, right? I think of it like anxiety is the uncertainty or the not knowing without the trust, right? I think not knowing can either create anxiety or it can create freedom or trust. You can probably substitute trust in here. Think about like going on a vacation in the future. I personally am a kind of person who likes to have things sort of planned out and know what's going on and what to expect. That's just my personality. I do better when there's a little bit of structure, when things have been decided, at least partially. Other people, different personality types, love leaving things open and undecided. And like, that's part of the adventure of it. Right. And I do believe that too. I do believe when I don't know what's going to happen, I don't know what to expect, I don't know what the options are going to be, and we just go forward and like, well, let's just go see that it can be part of the adventure. It can be part of the fun. Freedom comes from trusting ourselves to be able to do what needs to be done or be able to, feel the spirit in the moment or something like that, and trusting God that he will take care of the rest. Anxiety is just a resistance to faith. It's like, I can't not know. I have to know. I have to have a plan. I have to have it figured out. Right? It's uncertainty without the trust. Faith is uncertainty with trust. And here's the thing. I don't even think dying is the worst thing. Because oftentimes our lower brain, our ego, our natural man will say, if I don't know, then something terrible will happen and like we're going to like die. That's what it feels like in our bodies. It feels like impending death. But I don't even think that death is the worst thing. Right? Because at least with death, we then go on to the next life, to the spirit world and judgment and all of that, if that's what you believe. If you don't believe that, then maybe death is the worst thing. But for my audience here, who tends to be Latter-day Saint women who are trying to be better disciples of Christ, trying to love better, I don't think death is the worst thing. I actually think that anxiety could be one of the worst things. Anxiety or depression, like losing hope in everything, losing faith in everything, trying to do everything on your own, wearing yourself out, right? I think that's one of the worst things. I'm going to think about this a little bit more and see if there's something worse. I personally am a little bit afraid of pain. I'm afraid of getting hurt and not dying, to be honest. Like I'd rather just kill me, right? I mean, I know I have a purpose and I don't want to die if it's not my time, but I am a little bit afraid of pain. And I think it's because I have this image of myself of like, I'm a wimp and I can't handle pain and like, I'm not very tough with it. But if I were to trust myself, like I have birthed 3 babies. If I were to trust myself that any pain that comes my way, I can handle, or there will be people around to help me, or God will help me, that might shift a little bit for me, right? In which case that then I think really this anxiety, this lack of trusting God is one of the worst things. How do you live your life without having the ability to turn things over to God? I don't know how people do that. I believe that one of my gifts is faith. And I also believe that one of my jobs as a person with the gift of faith is to bear testimony and to share my faith. Because in the Bible dictionary under faith, which is one of my most favorite things to read and study, it says, faith is kindled by hearing the testimony of those who have faith. You know what else it says here in the Bible dictionary? It says, the Lord has revealed himself and his perfect character, possessing in their fullness all the attributes of love, knowledge, justice, mercy, unchangeableness, power, and every other needful thing, so as to enable the mind of man and woman to place confidence in him without reservation. Isn't that beautiful? The Lord has revealed himself to us. If we are willing to search for that revelation, to look for that revelation, to see God all around us, He makes it obvious that He is there and that we can trust Him without reservation. That is like such a beautiful thought in my mind. Okay, 2 Corinthians 4:17. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment. Because remember, this life, we're going to look back in the eternities and be like, wow, that went by fast. Worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. When you feel anxious about whatever is happening in your life, I want you to think about that your affliction, even if it feels really heavy and impossible right now, is a light affliction and is but for a moment. And it worketh for you a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. Part of this, when we are in the deep, dark abyss of life and life feels heavy and slow and impossible, is trusting that God sees us. God sees our struggle, that He is there. He is around us. He is working for us. And if this is our lot, then it is for our own good. I know that sometimes sounds flippant, but I think that is the ultimate trust. The ultimate version of faith is, Lord, I am struggling. This is hard. I can't handle it. I don't want this. But thy will be done, right? If this is my lot, if this is my work, then I'll do it. And I'll put one foot in front of the other and I'll take it moment by moment, hour by hour, day by day. I will subject myself to whatever it is that you will have me do and be. I think that is a beautiful faith. It's a hard faith. It's a difficult faith. I've been there. I get it. And I also know that trusting God, trusting Him in His business is the only way. What else are you going to do? Okay, God, I don't believe in you anymore. I can't do this. What's left? You're still going to be in the dark, deep abyss, right? You still haven't solved the problem if you give up on your faith in God. Okay, that's enough for now. And so are you. If this episode made you think of yourself, God, or the world in a new way, would you please give it a rating and a review? And if you want to truly do the work of being the best you at what you do, go to danitabremmer.com to schedule a free session with me. Until next time, go be you and follow the Spirit.